Yo, now it's the Red Blue Podcast crew. Reviewing flicks, both old and new. Red and blue, not political. Nah, man, chill. It was Marvel versus DC till we lost that thrill. Don't stress the episode, don't ask the season. We double up franchises, don't ask for a reason. Moti's got rules that nobody gets. His takes on movies, they're wild as it gets. He's got Superbald A and Gray by his side, trying to keep it sane while they're in for the ride. Moti's measures are out of control, but in the end he's got the final role. Yeah, that Blue Podcast, come check the scene. Movies old and new, know what I mean?
And we are live talking about James Bond in the late 80s. How are you today?
I'm all right, you?
I am doing great. These movies are quite interesting. I realized after that most recent watch, I had seen one of these three and I actually had forgotten about it. So we are back at it, and I think it's the perfect moment to actually start with this bonus episode with A View to a Kill, the last Roger Moore. What did you think of that one?
It wasn't great. It's one of the weaker Bonds, and I'm not a big James Bond fan to begin with, but I mean, some of the movies were good. This is definitely one of the weakest entries.
I feel you. I feel you. I need to actually bring the notes I got to see if I'm on the same page as you on that. But I'd say it's not the finest, it's not the best, and based on what I see, it's actually one of the worst. So I'm with you. It's like in my bottom. It's in my bottom. Actually, a lot of what we are covering, half of them are in the bottom. There's only one that's much higher than the other two, but I guess we will get into it now. What didn't you like, or what did you like about this A View to a Kill?
Okay, so I did take notes, but I didn't take a whole lot of notes. As I said, because James Bond isn't my most favorite thing, so I don't really have a whole lot to say about any of the ones that we're going to be reviewing. Yeah, this one I just found. I mean, you do have to suspend disbelief a lot with Bond movies. They're not meant to be particularly realistic, but this one stretched it to the limit. And I do remember when we reviewed, I believe was okay, I'm forgetting the name of that one. The one that came out after Moonraker.
You Only Live Twice.
You Only Live Twice. And I remember that Gray had made an observation that, that movie, they had tried to make the series a little more grounded, less goofy and dependent on gadgets and things like that. And at the beginning of the movie, we see Blofeld fall down a chimney, and there's a cartoon sound
that was for your eyes only.
Oh, for your eyes only.
Yeah, for your eyes only. That's for your eyes only. I mixed up both. For your eyes only.
For your
the
eyes
chimney,
only.
That's for your eyes only.
Yeah, and after that, I think it was the one that came after that was Octopussy. That one made so little impression on me that I don't remember any of it. I can try to think of it, but in this one, I guess they just abandoned trying to make it grounded and more realistic. It is goofy as hell. To their credit, Bond doesn't rely anywhere nearly as much on gadgets in this one. Like, there isn't even the obligatory scene where he's in Q's lab and he's getting shown all his gadgets. So I'll give him credit for that, but I mean, it was just bloody goofy. And the story, I found the story hard to follow. It was just overly complicated and overly convoluted. Too many characters. And it had some good talent in it. I mean, obviously, it had Christopher Walken amazing actor, one of my favorite actors in this movie, and you could tell he was having fun in this movie. I don't think he was very, very well known at this time. At this point, he had been in Deer Hunter, a few other things, but he wasn't like Christopher Walken is now. He was still very much a sort of a character actor making a name for himself. But you could tell he was having fun in this role, and he lost himself in it. But it's such a goofy fucking character. Um, the Bond girl, which would play her character name was Stacey Sutton. She was played by the late Tanya Roberts. Not a particularly good actress, to be honest. She played Midge in that '70s show, and she was great in that. But in this movie, she's just, I don't know, she's just so flat.
But how old was she? Was she like 30?
30-ish, maybe.
So she
I'm not.
died at like 60? That's sad.
Yeah, no, she wasn't particularly old when she passed away, and sadly, she only died a few years ago. She wasn't very old. I think she was maybe close to 70 when she died. I'm guessing. I don't know. I'm going off the top of my head. Um, I was surprised to see Patrick McNee in it, though he played a very minor character, played the character of Tibbet. Um, he played John Steed in the Avengers. Not those Avengers, but in the '60s there was a British spy show called The Avengers. In French, it was
Wow.
the Chapeau melon et bottes de cuir. um, and that show was, this is very much an aside, has nothing to do with James Bond, but that show was co-created. It was created by a Canadian who was working in Britain in television in Britain at the time, called Sidney Newman. He also later co-created Doctor Who. So Doctor Who it's very British. It's very British staple, but it was co-created by a Canadian. There was yet another Felix Leiter. This is sort of becoming a running joke, I guess. They're like, screw this, we'll just recast him every fucking movie. I know there was like in one of the movies he said he had plastic surgery or something, so I guess he has plastic surgery every movie, because sometimes he's old, sometimes he's a little younger. In the unofficial James Bond movie, Never Say Never Again, he was actually black. It was very much a movie of its time. Came out in '85. The theme song was done by Duran Duran, which was a new wave band in the '80s. Hungry like the wolf. One thing I did find funny is at one point when they're showing off the gadgets and everything, Q has and I think this was the remote control for Bond's car. It's the same exact remote control that Doc Brown had for at the beginning of Back to the Future, when he remote controls the DeLorean with his dog in it for his first time experiment. But that was actually like a very common RC car remote that existed at that time. I had an RC car when I was a kid that had that same remote, except mine wasn't wireless. It had a wire going to my RC car, but I just found that kind of hilarious. And again, as I said, these movies aren't really meant to be taken seriously, but there's one thing that just at least things in movies bug me when I'm knowledgeable on the subject and I recognize that what they're doing is like wrong or impossible. I guess that's my autism showing, but the scene where like
I'm with you.
one thing that bugs me is, especially when cars take way more damage, so much damage that in real life they would not be able to drive anymore, but they still keep driving. At one point, he's driving half of a car. His car keeps getting damaged, and at one point, yeah, he gets T-boned or he gets sideswiped at the back of his car, and the entire back of the car disappears. But it's a completely clean cut, and his car would not be able to drive anymore at this point, even if the front engine wasn't damaged. I won't get into all the technical, mechanical reasons why, but I'm not a professional mechanic, but I do a lot of my own mechanical work on my cars, so I'm knowledgeable on the subject, and I would need like a flow chart to explain all the ways that this is not possible. So that bugged me, but again, I'm weird, and also these movies aren't supposed to be taken realistically, but sometimes they stretch credulity a little too much.
Cannot blame you.
Yeah. Grace Jones, who played Mayday, she was Christopher Walken, Max Oren's right hand woman, I guess. She was kind of a big deal in the 80s. She was a musician, a model. I don't know what she's doing now. Did an okay performance in this movie. And I honestly didn't pay any attention to any other characters. I thought them all completely forgettable. I don't remember their names. Didn't bother to look up the actors. Um, yeah, to me, this, at least of all the ones that I've seen so far, this is like the worst one. The only one that I could say that is maybe worse is Never Say Never Again, but that's not an official Bond movie. And also maybe Moonraker, but Moonraker I find it hilarious. I like it for for reasons different than what the filmmakers intended.
Tragic.
Yeah. um, yeah, and I think at this point there was, and I made this observation as well for the other um, Roger Moore movies that we have reviewed since I've joined the podcast, that they seem to be following just a formula. Like it's as if they have a script with like blank fill in the blanks. They have a script script template, and you just fill in the blanks. Okay, Bond, and they have like a check, almost if they have like a check mark, a book of check marks. They have to say, okay, Bond has to go to this many different exotic locales throughout the world. He has to have this many romantic scenes with a woman and so many action scenes. It's like they're just following a template. And it really, really felt like this in this movie. I have thought I had seen this before. I might have when I was really, really young. A couple of things jarred some really vague memories, but I knew that it involved a blimp at the end, and I actually confused it with another movie I saw, which from the late '70s called Black Sunday, that also involves a blimp and the Super Bowl. So I confused it with that movie. Um, I don't think I had seen this before, and I probably never will again. I think at this point, yeah, the series definitely needed some retooling, and Roger Moore was getting old too. So I think it was, I think it needed some new blood, and that's what they did with the following movie. This is definitely one of the worst Bond movie that I've seen so far, with the exception of Never Say Never Again.
I feel you. Thank you for sharing. Now, again, I will try to reassure you a bit about the future. I think Pierce Brosnan was my second favorite James Bond overall. My favorite is Daniel Craig, and he really changes things around with the story, the formula, the
From what
art.
I haven't seen any of the Daniel Craig ones, but from what I remember being told, is that with Daniel Craig, they kind of rebooted because up until that point, it had been the same continuity. Like the James Bond was the same character, it wasn't a reboot. He was played by different actors, but he was the same character, and it was a progression. I'm not sure how that explained how the guy didn't age, but whatever. But about my understanding with Daniel Craig is they actually rebooted everything.
James Bond didn't age necessarily, mainly because most of these missions takes place in a few months from each other.
Yeah, I think realistically, they're all supposed to be within a small amount of time, and even but in reality, it was spread over like 30 years.
Yeah. But again, so Daniel Craig will be very different, and Pierce Brosnan has very good highlights. So with that being said, I will get into A View to a Kill. And again, I agree with you. It's one of the worst. The only worst one in my books is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and that was the only time we had George Lazenby as James Bond.
I did see that one, but it was a long time ago, so I'd have to rewatch it.
That one was painful, so that's a good thing you were not around when we covered that. Okay. But again, that was the first time I was like, you know what, James Bond is not that great. And this time around, A View to a Kill is low. Is it a terrible movie? I don't think so. I think it's just good, but I'm a big James Bond fan, and I like most of these James Bond movies. So when I watch that one, it's like a disappointment. It's like
Yeah.
I'm used to enjoy what I'm watching, and here, no, it's just not happening. And now, let's get into why I didn't like A View to a Kill. My first issue with that movie would be the opening sequence had terrible aiming, and again, that's me nitpicking a lot because I think it's very insulting to the viewer when you have big firefight and the henchmen they need to miss James Bond, and
Yeah.
some movies they have guns play in action, and sometimes it makes sense they would miss. Like other good example of where it makes sense is when there's a big shootout with like two armies facing off each other. Since there are several targets, it makes sense that some people would miss. But again, if there are two big armies, we should have casualty on both sides. But again, if
Mhm.
it's just James Bond running around and they're like just missing James Bond because it's a trope because James Bond needs to survive the movie, I don't like that. I'm
Yeah,
not on board.
it's plot armor, and yeah, and of course, yes, you expect the hero of the movie to survive, but I mean, they should put more effort into raising the stakes because, I mean, as a viewer, at least for me, like I'm like, okay, yeah, this, nothing's gonna happen here. These guys aren't gonna hit him. He's gonna get them all.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I said it in some movies, and shows they can do very well with firearm and
Yeah,
making it make sense when it doesn't hit the target because there are obstacle. Like I think John Wick overall, they used to be, especially the first one, they were very
yeah.
good.
I think in a lot of more modern movies they put more effort into that because because that had become such an action movie cliche of like
Yeah.
the bad guys can't hit the broadside of a barn, but the good guy gets everybody.
Yeah. But again, I specified the first John Wick because there were many other John Wick after,
Hmm.
and it kind of fell off on that aspect on later movies, especially with Ballerina. It's a teaser for Thursday. We talked about Ballerina. Anyway, to get back to A View to a Kill, my second issue, it's more of the same. Plot armor on James Bond in the elevator shaft scene. Smoke didn't incapacitate Bond, and fire itself didn't enter the cabin when they opened the door of the elevator. Um, Fire is attracted by oxygen, and if you open a goddamn door, the fire just get attracted by that door. So like, it was massive plot armor, and I was rolling my eyes while watching that thing. That's like the security guard in me. That's like, man, this is insulting to the fire department there. Um, Number three, pacing wasn't as tight as other James Bond movie. I felt like lots of scenes and or
It really
sequence.
dragged in some
Yeah,
areas.
lots of scenes could have been trimmed down, and it's sad because it's like 2 hour and 10 minutes. It shouldn't be like that. I feel like that movie could have been made under like an hour and a half, an hour 40 minutes. It's fine to have shorter Bond movies.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not saying every Bond movie is have pacing issues, but again, that one has definitely some
Hmm.
uh, pacing issues, and uh, we tease as well future Bond movies. I think uh, among the two weaker Pierce Brosnan flicks, the pacing was also an issue. So I think pacing became an issue in the late 80s of the James Bond era because Daniel Craig, it's been a long time, and I haven't seen the last Daniel Craig, but I've seen the other four, and I don't remember pacing being that bad with Daniel Craig era, but with Pierce Brosnan and clearly these late 80s flick, I think that was something they should have worked on. Um, my fourth issue, unbelievable how James Bond could stay that long hanging on the rope, and that was much later in the movie. Unfortunately, I can't quite remember 100% what I refer to. Again, I've seen all of these three Bond flick like in the last 2 week ish, and they were like really close from each other.
Hmm.
I just did that marathon like this week I tackle
I
all of
watched all
these
three
three.
this weekend, so
Um, and yeah, my fifth issue. The guy by the bridge couldn't aim. So again, that's much later in the movie. And number six, unbelievable. All along, the girl was able to hold on by the bridge in the end. So I feel like there was a lot of plot armor, not only on James Bond, but on many other characters.
yep.
And that's unfortunate. Because again, I'm a big Bond fan. I liked almost every James Bond movie. The only one, well, even the worst Bond movies in my book, I liked it, but nowhere near as much as the others. And I felt like that was a downgrade. So to say that it's sad this movie is this disappointing, it's coming from the right place, I think. Now, I was overly harsh. There's still a few things that I did enjoy. The action was fun. Bond seducing the girl on the boat was like the trope. The intro was fun, but is it the best Bond intro? I don't think so, but it was enjoyable. I think
I found it overly goofy though when he's snowboarding down to the Beach Boys, California Girls.
that James Bond for you. But
Yeah.
I think the most memorable so far we had, and you were not around when we covered that one, so maybe you should like watch it if you didn't, just for the sake of it. But Live and Let Die. I think that James Bond movie was amazing. I remember that one as
I
being
know it's considered among the best.
it,
And it is on my watch list.
I remember fondly of that one. I really liked Live and Let Die, and the theme of that one I think is the most memorable in the bunch. Now again, we had really good other Bond movies, but I always remember Live and Let Die. So when I listen to the new intros, I'm like, it doesn't beat Live and Let Die. Like Live and Let Die is the one theme I
Oh well,
remember
that
the
one is
most.
that one's iconic. The original version, and then Guns N' Roses covered it in the '90s, and I love that version. So it's a really great song.
Yeah, for a great movie.
hmm
Um, and now, okay, so the next thing, the death of the guy in the restaurant was cool. The chase in the tower staircase was cool. So that was the FL Tower, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And that's the FL Tower. So that was the one of these three Bond movies I had seen prior a long time ago. Because again, I'm a big James Bond fan, and I've watched these Bond movies since I was a kid, even if I shouldn't have, because like Pierce Brosnan, they get kind of dark. But nonetheless, I remember that FL Tower sequence. I think it's iconic and it's memorable, and
And they actually did film at the Eiffel Tower because I've been to the Eiffel Tower and I recognize it. I think the only scene that maybe was in a studio was the scene at the restaurant because there is in real life there's actually more than one. There's two restaurants on the Eiffel Tower. That particular scene maybe wasn't at the real one. Maybe that was in a studio, but everything else was the real Eiffel Tower.
I think
However, when the person jumps off the Eiffel Tower, you can see that they added a platform for them to
yeah,
jump off of because in real life they would not have had enough clearance and they would have hit the tower on the way down.
yeah. But again, I think despite the movie overall being lackluster, that sequence is something really cool. And
Mhm.
for me to remember specifically that movie for that Eiffel Tower moment, it's good. I think it's one of the strength and assets of the James Bond franchise, having these moments. You're like, I remember this.
Yeah.
Um, the iconic music during the chase scene was fun. James Bond asking too many questions is typical of a James Bond movie. I liked it, and James Bond seducing the villain was entertaining, and the ore sequence were fun. Bond swapping the tapes. There's so much to enjoy, to be honest. I must admit, the villain were consistent at trying to find very contrived way to end James Bond life, and it's kind of a meme. It's a
Yeah.
trope, but I think they were consistent on that. So I cannot really trash them because that's their personality. It's the way they use to make these characters stand out and be different.
They made fun of that in Austin Powers.
Yeah.
Uh, at one point, like Scott Evil says to Doctor Evil, is he's like, aren't you gonna kill Austin Power? He's like, no, I'm gonna create an over elaborate but easily escapable scenario. And then he's
Yeah.
like, aren't you gonna stay and watch him die? He's, no, I'm gonna leave the room and assume everything went according to plan.
And another movie that did poke fun at that trope that I really like, and if you have not seen, I highly recommend. It's The Fall Guy that came out in 2024 with Ryan Gosling.
I've heard of that. I want to see it. And
It's
I know it's based off a TV show from the '80s, which I never saw,
it's well, it's
but I've
inspired,
heard,
but it's
yeah.
inspired, but I can tell you it's not the same. It's
Hmm.
inspired, but it's not the same. It's a love letter to cinema in general, and they address also the tropes, and that's a very fun movie. So I recommend watching that if you like Austin Power cracking joke on James Bond. I think you'll like The Fall Guy.
All right,
Um,
I will definitely give it a watch. It isn't. It was already on my watch list to begin with, but I'll move it closer to the top of the list.
Yeah. So the next thing, the "Don't worry, it's all wrapped up" punchline was solid. I think one of the really good aspect of a James Bond movie is the one-liner. If you got a good one-liner, I can
Yeah.
forgive you for being lesser than great.
Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're cheesy. I know that Roger Moore, that was his trademark of the Bond era, was the one-liners. I think all the Bonds did it to one degree or another, but he was the one who did it the most. And his sometimes they were good, sometimes they were just cringeworthy.
And the other thing I really liked, they literally crashed a party.
Yes,
I like the cheese like that. It's like
yeah,
they are crashing the party.
yeah.
So
I'll give him that.
So overall, I like that movie. It's one of
Mhm.
the worst Bonds in my books, but it's coming from someone that liked pretty much every Bond movie. I'm the target audience for that kind of
Oh, excuse
flicks.
me. I mean, like I said, I didn't enjoy it, but that's just because James Bond isn't. I'm not the big. I don't dislike it, but and there's some that I found entertaining, but I'm not the biggest Bond fan. But I can understand why some people would. For some people, this movie falls into the category of so bad that it's good. You know, you can enjoy the cheesiness and the silliness and the campiness of it.
Now I don't have anything else to add on A View to a Kill, and I think it's the perfect moment to share our grade out of 10. Except if you'd like to add something else.
I just remembered something in the scene, and this is a not just a trope of James Bond. I think this is a trope of a lot of like action movies, especially stuff that kind of ripped off James Bond or were inspired by it. The scene where Christopher Walken's in his blimp and he has this model that comes up out of the floor to show all the people, like, I'm going to destroy Silicon Valley, and I'm like, where did they get these? Is there and the same thing in some of the Bond movies, like they have a bunch of henchmen working for them. They all have matching uniforms and stuff. I'm like, where did they get this? Is there a store or something, or is there like an Amazon for henchmen or something that has all this stuff, like, little miniatures to make little models so you can show how you're going to destroy the world and stuff like that. Like, well, Amazon didn't exist in the '80s, but I mean, there was mail order. Was there a Sears catalog for villains, or a specific type of store where you had to have a membership? Uh, you know,
The villain cult.
yeah, villains are us. They sell all the uniforms, all the weapons, and all the little miniatures and little stuff that only a villain is gonna need.
So what would be your grade out of 10 for A View to a Kill?
um, This is gonna be, I don't know, like a 5 out of 10 for me.
Okay, interesting enough. Now, me, it was a well deserved 7.5 out of 10. Um, yeah, that's A View to a Kill for me. And I guess this is the perfect moment to move on to the next James Bond movie we have to cover today. And that next one is not License to Kill, it is The Living Daylights, and as I am trying to seek for my notes, I will let you start on that one.
I quite enjoyed this. I think at this point in the series, the James Bond franchise definitely needed new blood, and I like Timothy. I know he's not. A lot of people ragged on him. They told him he wasn't a good Bond. I liked him. I liked him better than Roger Moore. Roger Moore was never my favorite Bond. Um, I thought he did really well. He's very different from what came before him. He made the role his own. Um, Not quite as campy. Not as quite, not as many one-liners, anything like that. They did fall back again. This is not really had to do with his performance. This is more had to do with the script. They did fall back again on relying on gadgets and stuff like that. Um, I did appreciate the ghetto blaster joke, though. That was hilarious. Um, but I very much enjoyed Timothy Dalton's. At least to me, he seemed like these are still very out of the realm of believability, but he was, to me at least, he was a more human Bond, at least for me anyway. And I enjoyed the script. It was a good action movie. Yeah, towards the end when he hooks up with the Mujahideen, boy, did that age well. Oh boy, because that I don't. I'm not sure how you're familiar with the history of all this, but at this point in the 80s, the Soviets were in Afghanistan. They had invaded Afghanistan, I believe, in the late 70s or earlier 80s, and they stayed there for a while. Basically, that became their Vietnam. They stayed there for a long time and got their asses whooped by the Mujahideen and other resistance fighters, many of which were secretly assisted and financed by the CIA, and some of whom later became Al Qaeda. uh, so yeah, that's a case of stuff blowing up in your face, but that is completely unrelated to this.
And it's
So,
accurate to what's going on in the movie as well. It blows
yeah,
up.
yeah. But I really enjoyed it compared to View to a Kill. I think it, at least for me, out of the ones I've seen, this was one of the better Bond movies. Good cast. Miriam Dabo, who played Kara Milovy. Um, I'd never heard of her before. Don't think I've seen her in any things. I had to look her up because she has the same last name as an actress I am familiar with, Olivia Dabo, who played Kevin Arnold's sister on The Wonder Years. And yes, they're cousins. So that explains that. Uh, Brad Whitaker, the American arms dealer, was played by Joe Don Baker. He always played those types of characters, or he played cops or stuff like that. Very much in that kind of character. And he actually died last month. He died just very recently.
That's
Um,
tragic.
and this movie had a new Miss Moneypenny. She had been played by, I can't remember the actress' name, but one actress had been playing her for years. So in this movie, they have a new Miss Moneypenny, played by Carolyn Bliss, and I looked her up, and she doesn't even act anymore. She hasn't done much. I think this was her most high-profile role. General Pushkin, played by the great John Rhys Davies. I love that actor. To a lot of people, he is. They know him as Gimli from Lord of the Rings. To me, he's always going to be Professor Arturo from Sliders, and also Sala from Indiana Jones. But he's a great actor. He was well used in this movie. Um, yeah. And I found the plot in this movie a lot easier to follow than View to Kill. It wasn't as all over the place. Still very much a typical Bond plot, but um, I think they did a good job of sort of refreshing it a bit. Um, so yeah, I did enjoy it, but I don't have a whole lot to say. Like I said, I didn't take many notes because these aren't my favorite movies, but I didn't really enjoy this one.
That's good to know. Well, I guess it is my goal to take a swing at it. I like that one a
Oh, sorry.
lot more.
Before we
Uh,
start, I just remembered even I know it's completely ridiculous, and And even though I've said like these similar things in other Bond movies, I didn't like. I really did enjoy the scene where they're sliding down the mountain on the snow in the cello case. I found that hilarious.
There's a lot of snow scenes in the entire franchise. That's
I
like
know,
the
I
big
know.
trope. That's
A lot of skiing and or snowboarding or anything or stuff involving snow.
there's at least two Pierce Brosnan moment I remember with snow and ski. Um,
Yeah,
so this movie, I liked it. Now I placed that one somewhere in the middle. Far better than the other two we covered today, but also a bit weaker than a lot of the previous Bond movies I covered and we covered. Now, my first issue with The Living Daylights. My first issue would be during the chase on the snow slide. The aiming was trash. We are back at that kind of plot armor shenanigan. My second issue is more of the same bad aiming on the rooftop sequence.
hmm
My third issue would be the girl at plot armor when the Russian shot at her and she tried to help Bond. Um, Number four, unbelievable how long Bond would hang on the plane.
yeah,
And the final issue. The final bad guy wasn't aiming and it got under my skin. It was terrible. It was insulting. So again, I feel like a broken record at that point. My issues are the same in both movies. The only difference I felt like the pacing was actually good in that one. That's the only big difference between both Bond movies. And the other thing, I read through my notes, and I will admit this: I don't see the intro music in my notes. So that means it's not necessarily bad. It's just maybe not as memorable
I didn't. Well,
as you two feel.
I personally didn't find it all that memorable. It was done by a band that was kind of big in the '80s called Aha. They only had one hit that I can remember. It was called "Take on Me." I don't. Maybe they had other hits. I don't know. But anyways, it was just very. It wasn't very memorable.
That's tragic.
Mm,
The intro theme of a James Bond movie is so important. But
exactly.
I won't take away points for that because I
Mm,
mean it's question of taste. I'm sure there's someone out there that's like, you know what, that's the best Bond intro. I'm sure we can find that kind of person. So I think it's unfair to say, you know what, I will take off points for that because again, it's not bad. If that was a bad team, that would be different. Or
mm,
if it's a fact that this music is actually on the wrong note or it's actually terrible to listen to, then I would say it. But if it's just I didn't grapple on it, I didn't like latched on to that song. I don't think it's that bad. And again, it's just a natural music, so that's fine. So now let's get into my likes. The opening sequence was fun, and if I remember correctly, that was the rescue of the prisoner, the Russian prisoner, and we also had
yeah.
that sniper girl that
Mm,
James Bond refused to actually shoot. That
mm,
was a one of that no, that was the best Timothy Dalton scene in
mhm,
these two movies. I'd say it's a movie where they try to humanize Bond very well. It's just disappointing they didn't go further with these two Bond movies. That was the only moment I remember being like, you know what, he has a better personality. He's more than just a weapon, and that's fun because like most of the time James Bond is meant to just be a weapon, the perfect guy, the guy that seduces people. So he doesn't need to be like that complex character. But having that moment there really changed everything. And that's like, you know what, thank you for doing that. I feel like we had a very different vibe with that James Bond with that moment. And that's kind of foreshadowing to what we will get with Daniel Craig because Daniel Craig is a lot more like that. A lot more like that. So I think it will be right down your alley because if you like Timothy Dalton, I think you will like Daniel Craig.
mhm.
Um, but again, to get back to The Living Daylights. Um, The action was fun. I sound like a broken record. It's always the same likes and always the same dislikes. Now I will admit one thing: the main villain had charisma. Is one line in the movie showed how much power he held in the army. That was by the end. He's like the only moment he's like, catch him, get him, and like the rest of the movie he doesn't talk. And that's some kind of trope with James Bond movies where you get that henchman. That's usually an henchman that doesn't speak the entire
Yeah,
movie.
exactly. There's always a silent henchman.
But now it's the main bad guy. It's
Mhm.
cool. It's like, oh, okay. And he got that one line that's very
Mhm.
effective. It's like, oh, that Bond villain is one of the peak. It's one of the best Bond villain just because of that one scene. So I think it's really cool. Now more entertaining action, cool music. That's like cool gadgets. Supercar was cool. The car scene was fun. The building blowing up.
Mhm.
It's it's just a very fun experience from start to finish in my books. And the girl convincing the guys to help James Bond was very fun, and it kind of gave another purpose to that Bond girl. She was more than just the person to be conquered. She was very important to Bond succeeding in the end, because if she didn't talk that way to the guys, maybe Bond wouldn't have succeeded. So she was a key factor, a key role in the victory of the good guys. And I think that's one of the first few times. But again, it's been a long time since the last time we talked James Bond. I think it's been at least 6 months, maybe less than that actually, maybe like more like 4 months. When was the last James Bond talk we had?
It's been a while. The last one
Maybe
we did
it's
was
more than 6 months.
the last one we did was Octopussy, and that was at least like I don't know 2 or 3 months ago,
Yeah.
maybe more.
So actually, that was the last time I really
Mm.
watched a James Bond movie, and that's why I'm like kind of iffy about it. But I think that Bond girl was probably
Mm.
one of the best. I might be wrong. I would need to rewatch
No,
all
I
70.
find her among at least in the ones I've seen, I find her among the better Bond girls. She actually had something to do in the movie. A lot of sometimes the Bond girls are just there as window dressing. They don't really do much.
And
Like an if you do a kill.
yeah, yeah, and I will say that the black girl at some point. I think that she was in the A View to a Kill. She was actually really cool, but she wasn't necessarily a Bond girl because she was like one of the villains.
Yeah,
But um, when we really speak
that's
about Bond
her
girl,
name is Grace Jones. Yeah.
I think the other good Bond girl would be the one in The Spy Who Loved Me. I don't think you covered it with me, The
No.
Spy Who Loved Me, but she was actually really cool. And I won't spoil it because I think that one is also worth a watch. So maybe you should watch that one as well.
Well, I plan
But
to, and I'm trying, and I'm slowly getting caught up on the ones that you guys reviewed before I came on.
okay,
I did watch Doctor No not too long ago, and I want to sort of work my way up to the first one I ever reviewed with you guys was Moonraker.
yeah. So what I can also recommend you is take some notes because eventually we will get back. We will have like a big discussion once we are done talking about the Pierce Brosnan
Okay.
and the Daniel Craig. We
Hmm.
will have a big part of a stream because that will be the last time we talk about James Bond.
Hmm.
And that last time, I know it's a long time. It's when we get to Daniel Craig. But again, the last James Bond stream, we will probably do a tier list of the James Bond movie or a big discussion covering what's your experience, who is your favorite James Bond actor or movie, or we will really have a very interesting discussion because you'll have seen maybe every James Bond movies at that point because
Hmm.
it's not now.
Yeah.
We are still a long way down there, but you will have seen most of them at least. Now the other thing I liked, James sparing the girl because she wasn't professional was cool. I already mentioned that it was
Hmm.
peak, but it was in my notes, so I needed to address it
Yeah,
again.
yeah, I like that too. Like it's shows this guy I've always been in the opinion that James Gunn isn't necessarily a good person,
Yeah,
but he does have a moral code.
yeah. And the last thing to mention now, it's not the intro because again, I didn't mark down the intro, but I think the overall music outside of just the intro and the James Bond theme, I think the music was actually interesting because it's in my note. I see music, so that means I like the music overall, like in the
Well,
action or some of
they
the
definitely did
scenes.
something different from other Bond movies, and
That was
I
interesting.
think it fit well with the movie.
Yeah. So with that being said, I don't have much more to say about that Bond movie. So I will ask you: do you have anything else to add on that Bond experience?
Um, Not really. I just thought of something. This is not really related to the movie, but I don't know how familiar you are with Doctor Who, but the character of the Doctor in Doctor Who, he's a Time Lord, and whenever he's mortally wounded, he can regenerate into a new body, which is why the show has lasted 60 plus years, and there's been like 15, 16 people who have played the Doctor. And there's a sort of like this jokey fan theory online that James Bond is a Time Lord because, he's played by different actors, but he's meant to be the same person and he doesn't age. And I've always said, well, that is true because he was once played by Timothy Dalton, and Timothy Dalton once appeared in Doctor Who as a Time Lord.
That's interesting. I didn't know. I know about
Mm,
Doctor Who, but I
mm,
didn't really watch. Maybe I've seen one episode or two
mhm,
at most, but I know it exists. It's
yeah.
sci-fi and it's very popular and liked. But yeah, I guess now it's the closing toss on the
Mhm.
Living Daylights. What would be your grade out of 10 for the Living Daylights?
This one, as I said, I really enjoyed it. For me, anyways, it's going to be among the better Bond movies. Not among the best of the best, but still among the better. I'm going to give this a. I'm sort of hesitating between 7.5 and 8. I think I'll give it an 8.
That's interesting. That's interesting because we got to sing great. I
Oh,
gave
really?
this Bond experience an 8 out of 10. And again, I feel like that one is somewhere in the middle. It's clearly not in the bottom like the other two we are talking about today, but
Mhm,
I remember fondly a lot, like Thunderball, the Live and Let Die. There's so many I can think of that I like more. And shockingly enough, I'm a big fan of Doctor No. It's my favorite Bond movie as of right now. Um, and yeah, so I guess we talk about the last Bond experience. And this time around, to shake up things, I will be starting. And it's unfortunate because I don't have a lot to say about that Bond movie. It's so unfortunate, really. Like again, I'm a fan of that franchise. I won't say it enough, but here we are with my second least favorite Bond movie, um, and this is License to Kill. I got three issues. It's not that many, but I feel like they impact a lot my experience, and I didn't care as much about that Bond movie as the other Bond movies we had. Um, my first issue with License to Kill in the warehouse, nighttime, the villain can aim. It bothered me. And number two, the villain was weak.
sorry to cut you off, but your video seems to have frozen. I can hear you fine, but your video seems to have frozen.
Oh, I see. It's
Mm.
it's sad. Um,
But I can
I
hear you
guess
just fine. I can hear you just fine, though.
I guess I will continue until I'm on froze.
Yep.
It happens,
Hmm.
but yeah, my second issue would be the villain was weak, and I feel like in a Bond movie you don't need the best villain, but I feel like that movie dedicated so much time with these bad guys. I need the payoff. I need something worth my time, and um, the Bond girl was also forgettable, and I wasn't invested with a License to Kill at all. Like I was coming back from the previous Bond movie we talked about, and that felt like a letdown. I was like, you know what? I enjoyed so much the other one, and now it feels like one of the worst Bond movie. And even if I don't have that many issues, I don't have that many likes either. I barely have notes there. So I guess I will get into my likes. The opening sequence was entertaining. The shark scene was fun. We got so many shark scenes throughout that franchise. Uh,
Yeah,
that one is fun. I won't lie, that one was fun. James Bond finding the dead body of the girl was sad, and I think that's outside of the man with the golden gun. I think that was the first time we had a Bond girl dying. I might be wrong on that, but I know the man with the golden gun was, and that's weird because now there's no longer that camera. Um, I guess
yeah.
I will
I
just
can still hear you though, and that's really what matters. So,
yeah, you're right. So I will continue on that,
mm-hmm,
and because I'm almost done with my notes.
mm-hmm.
Um, so nice music, and again I don't see intro out there, so that means that intro is also not impressive at all. That's sad. Underwater action was cool. The bar fight was fun, and Bond fashion cool gadgets. I like gadgets in that one, and that's as far as I can tell. That's all I liked. I feel like almost ashamed because I'm the big defender of that series, but there's not that much I can say about that movie. That's why I feel like it's one of the worst. So I will let you go on now.
Okay, just a moment. Um, yeah, for me, this was compared to Living Daylights. This was kind of a drop in quality for me. Um, and even like my biggest issues, I felt this didn't even feel like a Bond movie all that much to me. Um, like if you had taken like the same script and just removed James Bond and replaced him with like I don't know some cop or a CIA agent or something like that, the movie would have just worked exactly the same way. It didn't really feel like a Bond movie all that much to me. Um, the plot was kind of predictable, generic. There was a lot of movies that came out like this in the '80s, and it was like I found it a bit derivative of other stuff that was going on at the time. That was because it dealt with like the cocaine trade in Miami and in the Caribbean, and like there's in the '80s there was Miami Vice that dealt with that, and Scarface and a bunch of other movies that came out with that kind of stuff. So and as you said, the villain was kind of at least to me was kind of a weak villain. I didn't find many of the characters believable. Um, No, this to me is among the one of the worst of that I've seen. It's not. I wouldn't say it is the worst, but it wasn't that great. Um, yet another Felix. I think at that point it just became a running joke in the franchise. It's like let's just recast him every time we feature that character. Um, his wife, who and there's this trope called fridging where somebody has gets married or something, falls in love only for that woman to get killed. Usually happens to the protagonist. It didn't happen to Bond. It happened to his friend. But I would say this is an example of what they call fridging, where a female character only exists to die to motivate another character. Um, she was actually. It took me a while to figure out where I had seen her. I was trying. Sometimes when I recognize a character in a movie, I try to remember where I saw them before going to IMDb, and it took me a while, but I finally remembered she was played by Priscilla Barnes, and she was Terry from Three's Company, a show that I watched a lot with my parents when I was a kid. Um, there was also a very young Benicio del Toro in this movie. I think it was his first movie or one of his first movies. The dude was young, and it took me a while to realize it was him. Um, the Professor Joe character was played by Wayne Newton, which I found hilarious. I don't know if you know who that guy is, but he's like a lounge singer, and he was kind of semi-popular in the 60s, 70s, 80s. I find his music kind of cheesy, and I think that's part of his appeal with some people. Um, but I liked his performance in this. It was a goofy thing, but I liked his performance. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. To me, it was a real big drop in quality. And as I said, it didn't even feel like a Bond movie. Just take out Bond, replace all the mi, you know, the Bond related elements, and replace it with another character, and the movie it would work just as fine. It's a typical revenge plot movie, you know. Uh, Honestly, in a ways, it's just like Beverly Hills Cop. You know,
Yeah, that's
his friend
interesting. I
his
like
friend
that
got
parallel.
while in Beverly Hills Cop, his friend got killed, and then that's what led him to go out and do whatever, and he defies his. He defies his bosses and goes to investigate the crime, even though he was told not to. Same thing happens here. Okay, Felix is not killed, but I mean, he's almost killed. His wife is killed, and he's told by MI6 to not go and investigate this, and he does it anyway. Um, and like and Beverly Hills Cop no, it was not the first movie to do that either. That's a really old trope, which is why I say like this is you could replace Bond with another protagonist and it would still be the movie would still work. Um, so yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say. This even when you adjust for inflation, this is the Bond up to that point. This was the Bond movie that had made the smallest profit. It still did a decent profit. I think it made about 4.5 times its budget, so it wasn't a flop by any means. Um, Excuse me, but up to that point, that was the one that made the smallest profit. Um, Now between the License to Kill and the next Bond movie, which was GoldenEye, there was 6 years that passed. I don't think this had anything. The profit thing had really anything to do with it though, because they were still.
It was
It had
more
been a.
casting, I think.
It had been like it had been a success in the eyes of the studio. It's just there's a lot of stuff that happened behind the scenes that delayed that movie. Timothy Dalton actually had a 3 movie contract. He was supposed to play Bond in the next movie, but just because there's so much time had passed, they let him out of his contract and recast it. But it had more to do with the fact that MGM went bankrupt and there was other stuff going on behind the scenes. That way, there was such a long period between License to Kill and GoldenEye. It didn't really have to do with this movie's profit. It was considered a success in the studio's uh, in the studio's eyes. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to add to it. Compared to if I were to just compare Living Daylights and License to Kill and not the whole overall Bond franchise, I would say this is a massive drop in
Letdown.
quality. Yeah, massive letdown. Yeah.
I will echo what you said, and I
Mm.
guess that's the perfect time for the grade. What would be your grade out of 10 for
But this
License to
one
Kill?
is going to be like a 6 out of 10 for me.
I feel you.
Mm.
I'm very close. I am with a 7 out of 10, and now I guess it's a perfect time to reflect and talk a bit about James Bond in the 80s. And I will start by sharing my ranking, or I should say, the bottom 3 Bond movies in my book
Mhm.
and the top 3 Bond movies, because now we covered 17 out of 26 Bond movies. My bottom 3, no surprise there. At the rock bottom, we got On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I gave a 7 out of 10. That's one of the few James Bond I'm like, it's not worth your time. It's not worth a watch. And to add more, um, that specific James Bond, it's the only time the actor was around. So that's a letdown. Now, my second least favorite, License to Kill, the one we just covered. It's quite low with a 7 again, and it's then followed by another movie we covered today, A View to a Kill, with a 7.5. So these were my bottom 3 James Bond movie, and I've seen 17 as of right now on that most recent rewatch. And here is my top three. With in third place, Diamonds Are Forever. I gave a 9.7 out of 10. And I remember the music on that one being really cool. The intro was also quite memorable. And I mentioned that one prior, but in second place, Live and Let Die with a 9.7 out of 10. I adore that movie. I cannot wait to rewatch it. I speak about it right now. I want to click on it and watch it again just for fun. It's big James Bond. It's big James Bond, and I think I froze again. So I guess I will go on by saying my favorite James Bond is Doctor No, and Doctor No is a 10 out of 10 for me. It's a perfect movie. I like that thing. With that being said, let's reflect on James Bond on the 80s. So you've seen most of the James Bond. I think you've seen every James Bond in the 80s, did you?
Yeah, because the first one we ever did on the podcast that I ever did with you guys was Moonraker, which I think was 79.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
after that, it was For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah.
After that, Octopussy, View to a Kill, Living Daylights, and yeah, License to Kill.
Never Say Never Again as well.
Oh yeah, and that one.
That
Never
one.
Say Never, yeah, Never Say Never Again. Yeah. Well, it was a remake of Thunderball, and when I wanted when I watched, I actually watched Thunderball before watching um, Never Say Never Again, so I could compare. And yeah, that's another drop in quality from one to the other. There was a lot of factors there, and we covered that when we covered that movie. But yeah, Never Say Never Again, I didn't find all that good. It is the out of the ones in the '80s, that is the worst one for me. Um, I'm not going to rate Octopussy because honestly, I don't remember it. I watched it, we covered it, but I don't remember it at all. I don't remember. I don't remember anything that happens in it, so I'm going to leave that one out. Um, uh, Probably out of the ones of the '80s, my favorite is Living Daylights. Um, For Your Eyes Only was all right. I don't, you know, better than Moonraker. Yeah. Um, View to a Kill is second worst. Um, After Never Say Never Again, and the third worst is License to Kill. So yeah, I know that I didn't really rank them in any particular uh, uh, sequential order here, but that's pretty much my opinion on that.
I feel you. Thank you a lot for
Mm.
sharing. Are you excited by any means to discover Pierce Brosnan?
Rediscovery because I did see Goldeneye a long time ago, and I remember liking it. I don't remember the movie though. It's been so long. It's been almost well, it came out 30 years ago this year, which makes me feel old. And I haven't seen it since then. I didn't really see it when it came out necessarily. I saw it when it came out on video, which back then took about 6 months to a year after the movie came out in theaters. It took about 6 months to a year before it was released on video. So, excuse me, I probably saw this around. I probably saw it around 1996. And as I've mentioned other times before, I remember the Nintendo 64 game that it was based on a lot more than I do the movie. From what I remember, it was very faithful to the movie storyline as much as possible. It is a video game, so obviously there's things they had to change. But I remember liking it. I'm probably going to like it again. I did see another Brosnan one, but the only thing I remember about it is the invisible car. And from what they were telling me, that is among
The
the,
worst.
the terrible
Yeah,
um, Brosnan ones. But
yeah.
just the fact that there's an invisible car, to me, that's just makes it goofy and campy and dumb. But um, and I have not seen any of the Daniel Craig ones, and I'm actually looking forward to getting into the Daniel Craig movies.
Me too, me too. And again, I will repeat some of the bullet points I got in mind about Pierce
Mhm.
Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan are the movies I've seen the most. And I will say that GoldenEye is very good. It's great. I cannot wait to rewatch it with a fresh set of eyes. The World Is Not Enough, being the third in the Pierce Brosnan era, was my second favorite. I really like that one. I think that one is one of the most underrated James Bond in the franchise. Cannot wait to rewatch that one with a fresh set of eyes. And there was also a video game about that one that I ended up playing, and I that's the odd thing.
I've heard about that one. I never played it, and I've been told that it wasn't as good as the GoldenEye one.
I got another odd take there. I like the World Is Not Enough game far more than the
Oh,
GoldenEye
really?
game.
I've never played it, so I cannot compare. So
And I played hours both games, and the big difference, we used a lot more the gadgets in the video games. Eventually, I will do some playthrough and all, but GoldenEye was a lot pew pew, and that's fine because it's James Bond. But GoldenEye,
I might be wrong about this, but I think the not GoldenEye, but the other game with
the World Is Not Enough.
World Is Not Enough. Thank you. I believe that game was made by a different studio than the one that made GoldenEye, which is why they're so different. But I had never played the one based on The World Is Not Enough, so I can't compare.
And again, The World Is Not Enough was also a much harder game. Maybe that's why I liked it so much more than GoldenEye. So I cannot wait to replay these games and watch the movies. And then we got like two not so great James Bond movie. I think it's Die Another Day, and the other one is I can't remember the name. But there was also
the only titles that I can remember for Brosnan movies are GoldenEye and The World Is Not Enough and Die Another Day. I know he did a fourth one, but I can't remember the title for the life of me.
The fourth one you forgot is kind of bad as well. But oh yeah, Tomorrow Never Dies. Yeah,
Tomorrow Never Dies. Yeah,
that's the four we were missing. But again, Tomorrow Never Dies. Not great. There's also a video game based on it. I've never played it. I cannot wait to play it. And again, Die Another Day. These two are really bad. I remember the intro of Die Another Day was actually really good, but the rest of the movie is so bad. You're like, I want to forget I've seen that thing. But then you got the Daniel Craig era from 2006 to 2021, and this is a more story driven. This is the more character arc driven James Bond in the franchise. Now I cannot wait to cover all of that. And once we get back in September for the Red Blue podcast, because now we are going on a break. Once we get back to it, I think it's week 2. We talked about GoldenEye. We talked about Tomorrow Never Dies. Cannot wait for that. I cannot wait to cry my eyes out of Tomorrow Never Dies. And again, I think we did something very nice today. It was fun. It's unfortunate Matt didn't had the chance to watch these movies. So also,
I almost didn't make it either because bloody construction.
And that's why we started later than usual.
Yeah.
But happy birthday, the podcast. I started this podcast 3 years ago.
To the podcast.
Yeah, I started the podcast 3 years ago. Back then, the first episode, I was alone talking about TV shows I was watching, and that was mostly Marvel and DC stuff. But from week 2 and upward, I was lucky enough for most of the weeks to have at least one guest, sometime 2, sometime 13, like the Big Barbie special. I enjoy doing that podcast. I never knew that podcast would last that long with that many dedicated people. Thank you very much, Superbald. I
have a lot of fun. And the rare times I've had to miss it, I hated having to miss it, but sometimes it can't be helped. But I have a lot of fun, and it's helped me rediscover my love of movies because I had dropped off the map of movies for a while. I had other concerns going on in my life, so I kind of took a back seat. But it's helping me since I started reviewing movies with you guys here. I've watched more movies than I think I've watched in the last 10 years.
That's amazing. And I have a very similar story. Like before doing this podcast, I will be honest, I was watching some movies here and there, and I was mostly a TV show guy because I was younger. I had more time to waste, and I also played a lot more video games. But now with this podcast, because Cole gave me the injection. Cole is amazing. We had Cole on the show last week, mainstream movie reviews for Karate Kid. He came in, and that felt great. That felt like the good old days. But Cole is the one guy that told me there's more than just TV shows, and movies are actually very fun. So I will thank Cole, and hopefully you will get to meet him on stream eventually.
I hope so. I've heard of a lot about. I've heard it's not the first time you've mentioned him, so I would like to meet the guy.
He's like co-founder. So without Cole, there would be no MTT the way it is now. There would be no Red Blue Podcast the way it is now. I don't even know if podcast would have lasted that long without Cole. Cole was like one of the founding member, as we can call it that way. And now we are out. Thank you very much, Superbald. And now I will wave a lot until I find
have a good summer to the two people who are listening to us.
yeah. That's the outro now.
Yeah, Red Blue Podcast. Come check the scene. Movies old and new. Know what I mean? The Red Blue Podcast. Come check the scene. Movies old and new. Know what I mean?